A very good afternoon, class. Today I will be teaching on the topic peptic ulcer or duodenal ulcer. This topic is for BSc second years and this is from the unit gastrointestinal system. So let us see the definition of peptic ulcer. So we know that an ulcer is an erosion or there is any breakdown in the lining of the stomach or the first part of the small intestine, an area which is called the duodenum. So if there's any erosion, okay, if there's any breakdown in the lining of the stomach and also in the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. Okay, so duodenum, jejunum, ileum. So these are the three parts of the small intestine. Okay, and if there's any erosions in the duodenum, then or in the stomach, then we call it as peptic ulcer. Okay, so ulcers damage the mucosa of the alimentary tract, which extends through the muscularis mucosa into the submucosa or deep. So these ulcers, okay, these erosions, what do? They damage the mucosa of the alimentary tract. Okay, and they start from the muscularis mucosa, then they go deep and deeper into the submucosa and more deep. So what happens is all the lining, all the alimentary tract is being eroded. Okay, or there is some breakdown. So this is the function of the peptic ulcer, how it can damage the alimentary tract of a person. So this is the definition of peptic ulcer. Ulcers that form in the stomach, okay, if there's any ulcers in the stomach, then we call it as gastric ulcers. If there are any ulcers in the duodenum, okay, like here, then we call it as duodenal ulcers. Okay, so these are the two types of peptic ulcer. Clear? So in peptic ulcer, it includes the gastric ulcers, that means the ulcers in the stomach. Okay, it can be anywhere in the stomach, and it also consists of the duodenal ulcers, where they are ulcers formation in the duodenum in the first part of the small intestine. Okay, so this ulcers, like I said, that it starts. Okay, it'll go deep into the muscle. Okay, so from this is the layer. Okay, the muscle, the mucosa layer. Then it will go deeper into the submucosa layer and then more deep into the muscles. Okay, so this is the extent of damage of ulcers. Okay, from the mucosa to the submucosa and deeper into the muscles. So this is peptic ulcer. So you can see also. Okay, so so this is these are the layers of the alimentary tract: the mucosa, the submucosa, and the muscularis externa, the muscles. Then we have the blood vessels also. Okay, so what happens if there's an erosion? Okay, if there's any breakdown, then in the lining of the mucosa, then this erosion will go deeper. Okay, it will try to extend more into the submucosa and then into the muscularis externa. Okay, so that is the extent of damage. So what are the risk factors? Who are at a higher risk for developing peptic ulcers? So first is H. pylori, which is the common bacteria for causing peptic ulcers. Alcohol is also person who is a chronic alcoholic. They may develop peptic ulcers. Smoking, liver cirrhosis, stress, taking any stress, then individuals who are more than 50 years above. Okay, elderly people, so they are also at a risk of developing peptic ulcers. Then this peptic ulcers is more common in males as compared to females. Okay, then normally hypersecretion of stomach acid, that is hydrochloric acid, can lead to Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. So people suffering from Zollinger-Ellison syndrome also, where the HCl secretions is very high, then that also they can develop peptic ulcer. Then gastritis, that is the inflammation, if there's any inflammation in the stomach, and use of NSAIDs. People taking analgesics, okay, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Voveron, Brufen, Okay, so if they're continuously taking these analgesic medications, what happens is they can develop peptic ulcer. So these are the risk factors. Next is the etiology. Okay, what is the main cause? So stress, anxiety, gram-negative bacteria H. pylori, it is the main causative organism. Stress, like I said, excessive secretion of HCl, familial tendency, blood group O, then use of NSAIDs, alcohol, excessive smoking, hyperacidity like Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, gastrin secreting malignant tumors. If there are any malignant tumors in the stomach, then they produces HCl. Okay, so they can cause septic ulcers, esophageal ulcers, and gastroesophageal reflux disease. That is reflux of the food content that has been swallowed, or it has been gone down into the esophagus. So these are the causes of peptic ulcers. Now coming to the pathophysiology, so peptic ulcers, they occur, okay, mainly in the gastroduodenal mucosa. Because why? Because this tissue cannot withstand the digestive action of HCl and pepsin. So this the gastric duodenal mucosa, okay, so they are very sensitive, and they cannot withstand too much of HCl and pepsin. So what happens is the vagus nerve, it stimulates the parietal cells. Okay, these vagus nerves, what do? When when there's too much of HCl and pepsin, the vagus nerves, they become active. They try to stimulate the parietal cells. They try to tell the parietal cells to secrete gastric acid. So because of this gastric acid, the erosion is being caused, okay, by increased concentration or activity of pepsin, or by decreased resistance of mucosa. That means that the defense mechanism of the mucosa is very low. It cannot fight anymore, and more of pepsin is being produced, more of HCl is being produced, and that is why erosion will take place. A damaged mucosa cannot secrete enough mucus to act as a barrier against HCl. That is why the defense mechanism is not working anymore. Okay, because the mucosa has been damaged. Therefore, it cannot secrete enough mucus to fight against the HCl. So the use of NSAIDs inhibits or it stops the secretion of mucus that protects the mucosa. So that is here. This is why NSAIDs also, they causes peptic ulcer. Why? Because they do not allow the mucus production to form, and this mucus production is very important because it protects the mucosa against the HCl. Okay, so this is the pathophysiology of peptic ulcer. So you can see here, this is the ulcer. Okay. Next, the sign and symptoms: dull, gnawing pain or a burning sensation. Okay. Then pain is usually relieved by eating. Patient will have tenderness. Patient will have heartburn. Then vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, and bleeding. Then patient will have burping, okay, flatulence, burping. When there's too much of gas and then it comes out from the mouth. Okay, so that is burping. Then patient may have vomiting, bleeding, okay, and bleeding while defecating, and patient will have tarry stools. That is the stools which contains blood. Okay, so these are signs and symptoms of peptic ulcers. So you can see here, this is a difference between gastric ulcers and duodenal ulcers. Okay, so duodenal 80% of peptic ulcers is commonly the duodenal ulcers. It is very common. Okay, so there are two columns: the duodenal ulcers and the gastric ulcers. So let us see the difference between the two. In duodenal ulcers, there is increased gastric secretion between meals, after taking food, or after meals, and during the night. Okay, whereas in gastric ulcers, there's decreased gastric acid secretion. Okay, so you can see the difference between the two. Then in duodenal ulcers, it occurs twice as many parietal cells, and in gastric ulcers, 2/3 as many as parietal cells. Then in duodenal ulcers, the pain occurs 2 to 3 hours after food. Okay, so after taking food, 2 to 3 hours after taking food, then patient will have pain in their stomach. Whereas in gastric ulcers, pain half an hour to 1 hour after eating food. Okay, so you can see the difference in the timing also. Okay, then duodenal ulcers, it is relieved. Okay, the pain is relieved by food. Okay, after taking food, there is some relief in the abdomen. Whereas in gastric ulcers, it is not relieved by taking food. Then in duodenal ulcers, the peak age is 35 to 45 years of age. In gastric ulcers, peak age is 50 to 60 years. Okay. Then duodenal ulcers, it may cause weight gain. In gastric ulcers, they may cause weight loss. Okay. And the signs and symptoms of duodenal ulcers, there will be hemorrhage, there will be perforation and outlet obstruction. Whereas in gastric ulcers, patient will have hemorrhage and perforation. Okay. So these are the differences between the duodenal ulcers and the gastric ulcers. And these two are the types of peptic ulcer disease. Now coming to the diagnostic test. Okay, so first what do? We have to check the pain, assess the pain. Okay, how long the patient is having pain? After having food, after how many hours the patient is having pain? So you will know what type of ulcers the patient is having, either gastric ulcers or duodenal ulcers. Then you have to assess for the epigastric tenderness, check for the abdominal distension. Then a barium study will be performed, okay, to check the formation of ulcers. Stool study, so stool examination, because patient will be having tarry stool, that is stool containing blood. So we have to perform, we have to check whether there is any excessive bleeding. Okay. Then we have to perform the gastric secretory study. So we have to check how much is the pepsin, how much is the pepsin that is being produced. Then we check for the H. pylori infection, whether H. pylori bacteria is present or not. Then and a breath test that detects H. pylori. Okay, so we can these are some of the diagnostic findings, diagnostic tests that we can perform in peptic ulcers. Now coming to the treatment. Okay, so in lifestyle changes, we have to change some lifestyle activities. Okay, so in the past, physicians advise people with ulcers to avoid any spicy food, any fatty food, or acidic food. Okay, so these are some foods that should be avoided in case of peptic ulcer disease. Then we should encourage the patient to avoid smoking, avoid drinking alcohol. Okay. Next, medications. Physicians treat stomach and duodenal ulcers with several types of medications. Like, okay, so some of the medications are H2 blockers. Okay, H2 blockers like ranitidine, Rantac, famotidine, or cimetidine. Okay, so we can give these tablets, which are the H2 blockers. What do? Their action is to reduce the amount of acid the stomach produces by blocking the histamine, which is a powerful stimulant of acid secretion. So what do? They will try to block the histamines. Okay, so if the histamines are blocked, then the acid will not be produced. Okay, so the production of acid will be decreased. So this is the function of ranitidine, famotidine, and cimetidine, which are the H2 blockers. Then we will also give PPIs like pantoprazole, omeprazole. Okay, so very common is Pantop. Okay, so proton pump inhibitors to more completely block the stomach acid production by stopping the stomach acid pump. So this, which is the final step of acid secretion. So what do these proton pump inhibitors or PPIs? What do? They block the production of the stomach acid. Okay, the gastric acid, the pepsin, they try to stop the production of those. So this is the function of PPIs, that is pantoprazole. Next medication is we give mucosal protective agents like bismuth or sucralfate. Okay, so these are mucosal protective agents. They will protect or shield the stomach mucous lining from the damage of the acid, but they do not inhibit the release of acid. So these medications, what do? They only protect the mucous lining, okay, from the excessive HCl, from the excessive pepsin, okay, but they do not stop, they do not have any action on the release of the acid. They only protect, that is their only function. Then when treating H. pylori, these medications are often used in combination with antibiotics. So there is a combination when we have to treat H. pylori infection. Okay, so we give antibiotics also. So the discovery of the link between ulcers and H. pylori resulted in a probable new treatment option, antibiotics for patients with H. pylori. Okay, so there is we give a combination. Okay, in peptic ulcers we give a combination of proton pump inhibitors, Pantop, combination of antibiotics. Okay, so this is called a H. pylori kit. It's like a combination. Okay, we can give these combination drugs to treat peptic ulcers. Now coming to the surgery, so that was about the medical management. Now coming to the surgical management. At present, surgery is performed to treat ulcers. The type of surgeries are this. So there are three types of surgical management. One is vagotomy, second is pyloroplasty, and third is antrectomy. So let us see the types of surgery in detail. So vagotomy, first, it is a surgical operation in which one or more branches of the vagus nerve are cut, typically to reduce the rate of gastric secretion. So we know that, okay, so vagotomy coming from the word vagus nerve. So what do we do here? We cut one or two branches of the vagus nerve. Okay, and vagus nerve is mainly responsible for the production of gastric secretions. Okay, so by cutting the branches of vagus nerve, that will reduce the production of the gastric secretion. So this is called vagotomy. Next is pyloroplasty. It is a surgery to widen the opening in the lower part of the stomach, which is called as the pylorus, so that the stomach contents can empty into the small intestine, into the duodenum. The pylorus is a thick muscular area. When it thickens, food cannot pass through. So in pyloroplasty, what do we do? We just try to extend the opening of the, or we try to extend or widen the opening of the stomach. Okay, the connection, we know that pylorus. Okay, pylorus is the connection between the stomach and the duodenum, which is the small intestine. Okay, so that connection, okay, we try to, because it is small and narrow, okay, so what we try to do is that opening we try to extend or to widen it up. Okay, so अगर वो wide हो जाएगा तो क्या हो जाते हैं, okay, when the food is being swallowed, okay, when the food has reached into the stomach, तो जो stomach contents है वो मतलब it will go directly into the duodenum, क्योंकि वो जो opening है वो extend हो रहा है. ठीक है, तो easily the food content will go into the duodenum for digestion. Okay, so that is called pyloroplasty. Next is antrectomy. Antrectomy is surgical removal of walls of an antrum, especially the antrum of the stomach. So you can see here in the picture. Okay, so so if there's any ulcers formation anywhere on the stomach, then that portion can that the pura wall here of antrum, that can be removed. So this is called antrectomy. Next, coming to the nursing intervention. Okay, as a nurse, the nurse's role are as follows. Number one, we have to support the patient emotionally, administer prescribed medications. Okay, avoid NSAIDs, provide small meals or small frequent meals as ordered by the doctor. Schedule care so that the patient gets plenty of rest. Monitor the effectiveness of administered medication. So we have to check whether the patient is having any side effects of the medication, of antibiotics or of PPIs or of Rantag. Okay? So we have to check the side effects. Then assess the patient's nutritional status and measure the weight of the patient regularly. So we have to, as prescribed by the dietitian, so whichever food has to be given to the patient, we have to check and we have to measure the weight regularly. Then teach the patient about peptic ulcer disease and help him to recognize its signs and symptoms. So you will explain everything about peptic ulcer disease, starting from definition to the treatment. Instruct the patient to take antacid 1 hour after meal. Okay. Then warn the patient to avoid aspirin or avoid NSAIDs because they are the causative organism. They are the causative factor for causing peptic ulcer. And aspirin is also known to irritate the gastric lining. Okay, so that is why we do not give aspirin, we do not give NSAIDs to the patient with peptic ulcers. Okay, so that was about the peptic ulcer diseases. Okay, that consists of duodenal ulcers and gastric ulcers. Okay, so I hope this is clear with you. Okay, this is also very important topic. Okay, so ulcers in the duodenum is called duodenal ulcer. Ulcer in the stomach is called gastric ulcers or stomach ulcers. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Thank you, class.